Good morning and welcome. I'm your host, Bob Pace, and I want to welcome you all that you've taken the time to find how to fight CPS, how to keep your children, how not to be take your children taken. Child Protection Services has really changed a lot over the years. I've been involved for 14 years, and I've talked to over 100 people that have similar circumstances that I had. It's certainly not a very friendly organization to work with. And I hate to tell you that they're very young, inexperienced, and they are dealing with something that's very fragile as our children. There's lots of mistakes made by them. And lately I've seen this change where anytime a allegation is made, it's almost 100% necessity for that child to be removed from the home. What that means, they're doing child trafficking. Now, what I meant by child trafficking is where they put children right away into something that is more harmful than they were in. Now, you say to yourself, well, CPS is supposed to protect their children from neglect and abuse. They're also supposed to do something called family reunification. And apparently, CPS has forgot about family reunification, the safety plan, and everything else. All they're interested in and all they're focused on is that monthly money they get for children. And I'm talking a lot of money, over $20,000 per child that they get from the federal government and the state government. And that's being used to, in my case, I was in Southern California. You know, they pay for their building. They have a Taj Mahal of a building. It's like the Emerald City of Oz. And it's not necessary to spend that kind of money. Money needs to be spent on the child. There's no transparency. There's no accountability. They're not governed by a board of supervisors or directors. No one's watchdogging the CPS. And when I talked to the director of CPS, it went in one ear, went out the other. He could care less about parents. And so I really feel what you're going through is really tough and really rough. You've had your child taken from you. And most likely, probably wrongly so. I mean, yes, they're there to protect our children. There's an interesting case I was reading about in Texas where a boy supposedly wasn't being malnutrition. He had a rash that broke out, and apparently the parent was trying some holistic approaches and trying to take care of the child herself. But then the social worker made mistakes. Anyway, it was a big mess. The child almost died. There is a necessity for child protection services. We need to protect our children, but we don't need to go the other way where the pendulum is swung to say that every case demands a child to be removed from the household. That is the general SOP right now. When allegations are made, and they're made by either lay people or professionals, and by lay people, most of the time the stuff isn't true. It's one parent pitting the other parent again. The parent calls in and says, my husband is not taking care of the kids, or my husband is spanking the kids too hard, or my husband this. What she's doing is maybe it wasn't true, and they're going through a divorce, and she's trying to get the kids that way. Kids need both parents. A daughter or son needs a mom or dad. A daughter or son needs a mom and dad. Case studies have shown that the biological parents are the best parents the best people to be taking care of our children. Extended families, foster care, um, they just, extended families are better than foster care. Foster care has some alternative motives. Plus, there's a lot of harm that's done with foster care. Foster care isn't all as it's meant to be. Now, I'm glad that you all have tuned in, and I hope that you interact with this podcast. I do this podcast 7 days a week, twice a day. One at 10 o'clock in the morning, another time at 7 o'clock at night. They're 1 hour long in Pacific Standard Time. There's one exception. On Sunday, I start a half an hour later at 10:30. Another show that's going on. Occasionally, I'll move the shows around sometimes. But what I'm telling you is that you have to be careful with CPS. You have to be careful because they're tricksters. They'll dupe it. They'll use the police department to force something that they want you to do. There's a whole list of things. But as far as this show goes, I hope all of you will text in a comment. All I ask is for your name and city and state. But if you text in a comment, it makes this show interactive and it can help other people. If you like to talk or like to tell about your story, I offer opportunity to call in at 626-698-0990, and I'll let you talk on speakerphone. Your face won't be shown, but you'll be able to talk all you want about your subject with CPS and maybe help out others or help me. But I extend you a warm welcome to call me at 626-698-0990. That's my office number, and during the show times, I'm available. Before or after show times, I'm not available. Now, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, and we had someone lined up this morning, but apparently they're having some issues, I'd be more than happy to have you on the show. All you need to do is send an email to Grace at vincentwdavis.com. It's a little ticket scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Hold on a second. Had the wrong ticket on. Sorry, I assumed everything was okay. Anyway, Grace is her production. And she's the one that produces and sets up the guest in the show and makes sure the show goes good. So again, if you want to be a guest speaker on the show and your face will be seen, all you do is email to our producer, Grace at vincentwdavis.com. That's Grace at vincentwdavis.com. And she'll help you get set up. We're found on Facebook. We're broadcast on YouTube, and the application we're using is called StreamYard. And we can put on, I believe, up to 4 people on the screen at one time. No, maybe it's only 2. I was thinking it'd be 4, but maybe it's 2. So now you're faced with the fact that something has happened. You're involved in CPS, Child Protection Services, a branch of social services. It may have other acronyms, other names, but the agency that deals with protecting our children is the one I'm talking about. And now you're faced with them, and I don't know what stage you're in. There's different various stages you can be in. But it's all based on allegations that are called in either professionally or by lay people. What I mean by lay people, it's people like your extended family, your brothers, your uncles, your aunts, grandparents, etc. And lay people could also be your friends in the neighborhood, acquaintances, and things like that. When they see something, they will call it in. But a lot of times they use it as a mechanism to take your children away from you or to give you a headache because they were causing it. I don't know. They're using it really bad. It should never be that way. In fact, I say that all allegations should be done in writing and your name should be signed to it. Keep it confidential, but signing what you say is true and putting your name and everything, then it makes a lot more credible because too many times lay people are misusing the allegations and wasting CPS a lot of time and putting the parents through a nightmare and a half. Now, I want to get into our first rule. If you're going to have something done with your heart and you need open heart surgery, you're going to have a valve replaced or something surgically to your heart, you need a professional doctor to do that work. You as a layperson cannot do that work. Either other lay people couldn't, a beginning doctor couldn't. So you get a professional. The same thing goes true for CPS. CPS is like Alice in Wonderland. You fall in that hole and you have so many closed doors and cards at your way that you can't find your way around. So that is a real discouragement to you because you want your children back. Well, in order to fight CPS, you need a lawyer. And a lawyer you need is a dependency lawyer, a lawyer that's schooled in family law, in juvenile cases, and dependency cases. Somebody that has been doing it a really long time. And we have a law firm that produces this show called Vincent W. Davis Associates. It's a firm head up of many attorneys. They have attorneys in family law, they have criminal law, immigration, and they also have dependency court, which is, child being taken away from the parents. Well, we have an attorney, Vincent W. Davis, that specializes not only in dependency matters, but also with CPS. He knows how to sue CPS. He has sued CPS and won lawsuits against them, both the federal and the state lawsuits. Now, filing for a lawsuit comes after your case is over. So if you're filing for one right now, it may be a little bit too late. So you want this Mr. Davis to defend you. And right now he's offering a consultation of 30 minutes with him to navigate through CPS, know how to fight them and get your children back. Now, he charges a fee of $49.99, $50 for 30 minutes. But it's very important and behooves you to contact Mr. Davis. And when you call in, make sure you tell him that Bob Pace sent you. And when you speak to Mr. Davis, make sure you tell him that Bob Pace sent you. It's real important that that you get an attorney, because without one, I was terrible. I was a mess for a year and a half. A couple of days ago, people asked me who I was, and again, I will tell you there. But going back to this attorney, all you have to do is call 888-6582. Say you want a consultation with Mr. Davis for 30 minutes. And then you do your transaction fee, and then you set up to talk to him, and hopefully you can acquire him for more of your services, and hire him as an attorney. His fees are very reasonable, and he bases it on the on the complexity of the case, how long the case been going on, where the case is, because he'll go in Northern California and other of the 50 states so he can practice law, and that's where he goes. But he's a trial attorney, and he's really long time attorney in DPS matters and CPS matters. So call him at 888-888-6582. Now that you got your mess in here, you kind of want to know, we talked about allegations. I said lay ones are really hard to do. The professional ones are people that are required by law to report a child of child abuse. So they have to. But they've been pretty good reporting it because it may have been right on. Where the lay person uses it for alternative motives. But you need to get this attorney. The only way you're going to survive this is hire an attorney who knows how to fight them. Now, whatever you do, don't panic. You can get and you will get back your child. I know you care as a parent. That's where you're going through the hoops and hurdles. It's just now, this time of your life, and like mine, we're out there looking for work. Out of work is not a bad thing, but it's important to have work to support your family. In my case, being as old as I am, it makes it a lot harder to get work. Now, I have rule number 2. Rule number 2 is you get a notebook, a blank notebook called your CPS matter. And what you want to do is you want each line item to be separate of incidents that happened to you from day one of the case until hopefully it's over in 48 days. You see, they have 24 hours to start the investigation, and they have 48 days to run the case. But practical speaking, I never seen a case done in 48 days. So with this notebook, you write down the increment, you write down the date, the time, and the people that are involved. Then you describe the incident, and then you want to do the outcome. You want to keep this notebook for the length of what you're doing because you refer back to it, because you won't be able to remember everything. So get the notebook, a blank notebook, and just put your CPS stuff in it. And that way, as you write each line item and skip a couple lines, you'll be able to track some things that help you with your case later on. Now, I just got a text message from Cindy Swern Ignosh. I'm probably killing your name. And she now, I don't know what city or state she's from, but she says relative filed 3 false allegations, all unfounded, against me, grandparent, and you're a grandparent, in order to get custody of my grandchildren. All it took. Wow. So you must have had custody of your grandchildren, and all this person had to do, a relative, wants to take them away, and CPS listens. That's truly sad there, Cindy. What were the allegations? And where is this? So I'd like to hear more about your false allegations so maybe I can help you. It's very sad and traumatic. And if you had the custody of your grandchildren, they should not have taken out. They should do it to extended family. And who are these relatives that are taking your child? What relationship are they? So if you could tell me that, and of course, the city and state you're from, I could try to help you further. Now, I finished off with rule number 2, which is keep a notebook of everything because you have referred to it because cases do tendency to run long. Mine was 3 years. Another guy I heard was a lot quicker. So it depends on what you ask for and who you talk to. Now it goes into the third rule, and this is a real important one. Do not talk to CPS workers. Do not talk to the police. And you do have to need to talk to them. Use yes, no answers. But don't add anything to it because they'll use your words against you. So when you talk to these social workers, they're going to use all kinds of tricks on you. They're going to try to make you say yay or nay. And so your answers should be short and simple. Yes, no answers. Be polite, but yes, no. Do not talk to the police. Same thing. If they have a court order, they can go into your home, but they have to have the court order. It has to be executed right. It has to be signed by a Westminster judge, and everything else that goes with your case. Now, if they have a warrant, it's a piece of paper signed and executed by a judge with a wet signature. And it's only good for the date that's on there. So if it isn't at today's date, then it's no good. And what that court order has to do is specifically say what they can do and what children they're investigating and what's the conditions of the parents. So I've told you 3 rules. It's really important you don't forget them. 1, hire an attorney. It's a must to win your case. 2, get out a notebook and take notes. And 3, make sure that you fight it. Because a lot of times we get discouraged and say, I'll just leave that number alone. Now, Cindy, if you could tell me your city and state or what the allegations you had as a grandparent, it would help me better help you. If you're still there, Cindy. Now, as this event unfolds, they have 24 hours to start the investigation. And when they do come and see your children, they're going to automatically try to take them because they're going to say they're in imminent danger. Even though no imminent danger may exist, they're strictly going to try to call them to get them to communicate. Oh boy, I'm saying it wrong now. They're going to try to get you to talk, and that's something you don't want to do. Do not talk with social workers. Do not talk with veteran police officer. So I'm really feel for you going through all this pain because I went through the same pain yourself. And 1 moment, please. I'm back. I'm sorry. Take care of a personal matter. So they have this warrant. They can come into your home or they can take your child, but you say no to them. You say no to the policeman. CPS has a great knack of using policemen to do their dirty work. Policemen are duped into thinking they have to do something that isn't true. And that's the sad part of things because it's very intimidating to see a policeman and they try to muscle your way into your home and assume that there's an imminent danger and they have to take your child. The best place for the child is to stay there. If they're doing an investigation, they'll come up with a solution, something, maybe take parenting classes, maybe a program, anger management or something. Maybe it's a drug issue and you have to be tested. Make sure you do your own testing. Make sure you do your own testing. Because their testing, you can't be dependent upon them there. And you're right. You have constitutional and civil rights. And you must exercise, you got to know about them. Just type in Google, what are your constitutional rights? What are your civil rights? Or say, in CPS cases, what are my constitutional rights? In CPS cases, what are my civil rights? You need to look at both of those. Anyway, you had these allegations come. They're trying to get into your home. They're trying to make you say something. You just want to say no. And the easiest way to get around of all that is say, I have an attorney. I want to talk to my attorney first before I discuss anything with you. I want to talk to my attorney first before I let them in the home. We will contact you. Ask for their card. Ask for their name and phone number. But whatever you do, don't let them in your home because they'll see things in your home they'll use against you. Don't give up your children because it'll be really hard to get them back. They're your children. You should fight to save them. It's a constitutional right. I mean, in my case, it was terrible because my case, you could see something was wrong when you visit my home. Now, I had a beautiful home. Everything was going great because I had a job. But once you lose your job, disaster will strike. And that's what happened with me. I lost my job. And through no fault of my own either. It wasn't because um, I was doing anything wrong. It was because the state of California was bankrupt and they were falling apart in 2010. And they had to get access to money. And they knew public funds. And so they wrote IOUs on them. And I told them, I need that money. I need to start the job. I need to pay people. So I had to quit as a general contractor and lose all that volume of work. So that's how I lost my job, but it was a domino effect. I already been struggling because half my retirement was cut in half. That was 40 years of retirement. Then on top of that, the banks that caused all the other banks to go bankrupt was a predatory loan market, and I had a predatory loan. And it was bad. It was so bad. And now we're at halfway through the show. There's about 30 minutes left. And again, I want to remind everybody you can interact with this show of texting a message to me. Just put, like Cindy did, her name and where the city and state you're from. And I love for all of you to do so. You also can do joys, the little hearts and little thumbs up and happy faces. You can do those comments. Those are nice. Now, if you want to talk on the show, you can call in at 626-698-0990. And I'll put you on the phone and people can hear you. I'll put you on speakerphone. They won't see you, but they'll hear you. Now, if you want to talk a later date and be a guest on my show, please email Grace at vincentwdavis.com. That's Grace at vincentwdavis.com. And she'll get you connected to be on one of my 14 shows, 7 days a week. You just say morning or afternoon show and say what day you want, Friday, Saturday, whatever, and she will make it available and give you the information. You can come on at that time and we go live together. You can help out your case and help out others. Things that you do are very similar to that. Again, Cindy, I appreciate the comment you came in. If you tell me the city, state, and some more information about your case, I'd gladly help you out. It's sometimes hard to think about because I see what's happened to my family. They've been devastated by this thing that's taken from my family. What I've seen is my family's not right again. When they broke in and took my children from me on that day of 2015. It was after 5 years of harassing me with allegations by lay people. They were my relatives, my in laws, my wife's side. They were making false allegations that weren't true. And for 5 years, I was fighting them off. I was saying that not to, not true. And in fact, at the beginning, I showed them my home, which I didn't have to. And they found nothing wrong with my home. They found the allegations were wrong. But they're doing this for 5 years. And finally, somehow they woke up and they insisted they had to come and see my house this time. Well, I was going through, as I mentioned, about losing my job through no fault of my own. But when the CPS started doing that, I had my parents were dying and I had their belongings. And they wanted me to liquidate their home and take their belongings and give them out to family and friends. So I took them into my house. Now, I should have put them in storage, but I didn't have necessary funds at the time because I had no job and I was trying to live a Spartan lifestyle, even though I had a very expensive home. And so I was duped in by a police detective that used a black and white unit to pull me over because he knew that I wouldn't pull over just an unmarked car. He had followed me after I picked up my son from school, and I was on my way to pick up my wife, and I was gone for maybe 5 miles gone driving there when they pulled me over. And when this black white pulled me over, he was sitting there saying, reason I pulled over, you ran a stop sign. I said, well, gee, the only stop sign I remember is way back at school, and that was 5 miles back. I did a stop there. And then he didn't want to argue with me because he knew he was saying something that wasn't true. But he had the detective walk up and said to me, you're coming to your house. I need to see your house. I need to inspect your house. And I asked him why, and he wouldn't tell me. That's how they duped, and that's how they came into my house, because CPS had called the police and made up something story-wise. And when I came back to my house, I was with my son in tow. We saw 5 firemen, 3 social workers, 2 code enforcement, 2 uniformed police officers, and the detective, all in my front yard. Why were they there? Why was it so important? My house wasn't burned down. It was not burglarized. I live in a private neighborhood, so this embarrasses me. So they said, you need to come to the house. I had nothing to hide. I didn't think my parents' belongings would be much of a problem. So I came into our home, and of course, the yard had belongings out there for my parents with tarps over them. It had belongings on the porch. I was sorting through everything. There's a lot of belongings. When I came to the house, they saw the boxes and the stacked furniture, and that's when they said, well, you're doing neglect to your children by having objects that could endanger your kids. Endanger your kids. So that's how they got my kids. They said there's imminent danger and they needed to take possession of my kids. They went to the schools of my other 2 kids, rounded them up, and took all 3 of them, put them in a blockhouse shelter near the dependency courts, right next to the juvenile jail, who had inmates walking around in the play yard next to where my children would be. And on top of that, they had a bee infestation and a beehive stinging children. This is their idea of how to protect kids. They're put with other kids. It was overcrowded. And the food was terrible. It was dirty. Because we came that same night to see how they're doing. And it was really bad. It was really, 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 really bad. And it was really sad because here these children had a nice home. and a mother and father that loved them, and they're put into this alien atmosphere where they were alienated from their parents because CPS was making up stories and telling all kinds of crazy things. And on top of that, they spent the next couple days there, and their schooling was not their school of origin. Their schooling was at the shelter, and all it was is a guy reading a book. That's their idea of education. Now, all three of my kids are very studious, doing A's and B's. My oldest son was in a private high school, learning robotic engineering on the STEM program. That's where you take a science class, a technology class, engineering class, a mathematics class every semester. My daughter was doing okay at middle school, and my young son was doing okay at elementary school. All the kids went through the same schools. My daughter was going to go to a private school too. But they stole my children and they alienated. They did all the things is against the law. Alienation is against the law. Child trafficking is against the law. And they're allowed to get away with it for the ruse that the kids were in imminent danger. The kids were in imminent danger. And that was not true at all. So after that, the next step they had was a safety meeting. That's where they're going to ask you for a list of names so the kids will be placed with family while you're going through this investigation process. And I said, well, I don't want them in foster care. And yes, we have a family member to stay with. We had my wife's sister and her husband. But we didn't think the case was going to go as long as it did. And it went really long. And they couldn't keep our children. They could not keep driving to school. And it was too much work for them. They don't realize, no one realizes how much we give to our kids or how well we take care of them. But it does affect me a lot to think back and to retalk it. Because I see the mistakes made. And my first mistake was I broke my rule number one. I didn't get an attorney, which I should have. Because during the safety meeting, they brought up the ICWA. And what that is, it's the Indian Child Welfare Code for Native American Indian families. Now, for a long time, in the 1800s and up to the 70s, the 1970s, Indian children were being abused. They were being killed. They were taken into school, their hair cut off, their heritage. They refused to hear anymore. They couldn't talk their native language. And they're trying to become what that time Europeans thought was civilization. Civilization is that what Europeans thought they're more civilized than the Native American Indians. Yes, in many ways they were, but a lot of ways they weren't. Anyway, we're all United States people here. And we had more superiority on the weapons. I mean, we had cannons and guns. They had bows and arrows. And these people were brutalized. And it kept going on and on into the 1920s and 30s. Finally, an act was passed in 79 that said that CPS workers must place them with Indian families if they're registered as an Indian or could be registered as a Native American Indian. That's the ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1979 that was passed. That mandates that Indian families take care of their own. children be placed with other Native American Indians. So that's talked about the safety planning meeting. Where to put your children. Sometimes they'll put it right away into foster care, which is a bad mistake. And the children and the parents don't meet together to talk about the case, which they should. They should have one a week meeting. Kids could tell them what the kids are doing, the parents tell them what they're doing and what the problem is. They could discuss the problem. Now, I realize some kids, under the age of 12 are still, hard to understand and so forth. But they miss their parents. They love their parents. And it's a sad tragedy when you're not with your mom and dad. It really hurts the mom and dad. It hurts the parents. And then you have an agency that is so bad. They don't have the qualifications. All they're interested in is the money. So I'm telling you this. You don't want to give up. You don't want to fight for them. But they moved our kids around to group homes where they were abused, where they were taught not to love their parents, hands down at their side. They're moved into foster care. And our youngest daughter was convinced or brainwashed that foster care was the way to go. Because I had lost my job, we were living a Spartan lifestyle. I no longer had the Disneyland passes at Disneyland because I couldn't afford the season passes. I couldn't afford all the other things I had. So it was really hard for them. And so my daughter was convinced that, I could live with my my custody parents who will give me more than my dad or mom will, which is wrong, which is totally wrong. We spoiled our kids, what we did. We gave them everything under the sun. We took them to other countries. We took them to other states. And when we went out, it was mom and dad out. It was always mom, dad, and the kids. We were a family. So what we did things, I think we only had one time that we had a father, mother night, So it was really kind of hard. And I know and I feel the anguish that you're going through because some of you told me some horrific stories, how the abuse is still going on and how it's come from generations after generations. Someone calls in and they said that I was in a foster system and they're still after me and doing silly remarks too. But I'm telling you this, if you continue to what they ask you to do, you'll make it through because after the safety meeting, they're going to have a dependency court for your planning meeting. It's going to be what your case plan is going to be and how you're going to get your kids back. You got to keep insisting you want family unification. You want to keep consisting that you want your children back. You let them know that. Now, CPS is notorious to take advantage of parents going through hard times. Maybe you lost a job. Maybe you have income problems. You could have squabble problems with your partner. Now, one thing is you never want to do domestic violence in front of the kids, physical violence. Also, you don't want to do verbal violence. Don't want to argue in front of your kids. That's a common mistake parents make. You have to learn to be good behavior on your kids. Suck it in. Just think of the kids. I know your pride will be hurt because you think you're right and your spouse thinks they're right. So there's that problem there. But as long as you think about your kids, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Now, during this dependency hearing, you're going to have the judge, you're going to have the lawyers for the social workers, lawyers for the children, and of course, they're going to have you have an attorney. Now, at that time, the only attorney that I got was a public defender. And that was a big mistake because I learned they don't do as much, especially if 30 case load of 30 cases or more. Or I should say 20. I kept saying 30, but sometimes it probably could be. But they don't have the best interest. The courtroom was really another disaster. The judge overseeing the case was a property judge. The judge knew all about car claims and how much the properties were worth and so forth, but knew nothing about family reunification, the temple. So what I'm telling you now is you need to be open to what they want you to do. Do timeouts. Don't argue in front of the kids. Do not yell in front of the kids. Do timeouts where you take yourself away from the situation. If you've done anything wrong, go with the game plan. Say yes, be nice to them. And you know you're going to go through a lot of hoops. It's going to be hard. It's really going to be hard. Because I know that you hurt because I felt it. I've been there. And when my daughter divorced her mom and me and her brothers and her grandparents and cousins, that was it. But she further rubbed in the wound where she sealed her birth certificate like she wasn't even born and changed her name. And it's amazing how a 12-year-old kid knows to do all those things. We know it was the coaching of CPS workers that did that. We know that they're the ones that carried it through. And that's wrong. That's totally wrong. Because now that she's in foster care, she's been adopted, they'll get money till she's 18. She's 21 now. So now they've stopped getting money from her. But I really hurt every day when I think about my daughter not with us as a family. Where was CPS's help? On a lot of cases, a lot of times they could have helped us. They didn't. It wasn't when they got rid of my public defender, my wife's public defender, that I finally had to get an attorney. And that's when I came across Vincent W. Davis. He's a good attorney. He's in dependency law. He's a trial attorney. He has fought CPS 1. He has gotten the kids back. And I strongly recommend you have a consultation with them for 30 minutes. It's only $49.99 for 30 minutes. So I'm telling you that think hard and be careful and be safe because they can't be trusted. And if you do have a public defender, make sure she or he does his work. There's a very important motion I want to tell you about called a 388 motion. It's a motion that you turn into the judge to have a hearing within 30 days. The purpose of the hearing is to introduce new facts, new evidence that can prove you're not guilty. Also, you introduce your classes or program that you've taken and show them and any drug tests you've taken. You introduce all the information. That's so the judge can do a modification of your plan and a way of seeing when your children will come back. Now, you should never agree to anything that the social service puts out for you to sign. Don't be forced into sign something when you don't feel good about it. So I know there's been a long road, and you wonder if there's hope down the tunnel. Yes, there is. As I say, I've been talking to over 100 people now, and people have come back and said they've gotten their custody back and so forth. And thank you for the advice that I may give. But the person that win your case, rest assured, is that attorney, Vincent W. Davis. Now, I hope you stay with the program. I'll be on again tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And maybe by then you like to talk or send me some more comments or whatever. I want you to have a safe, constructive new year with much happiness come your way. Again, thank you for listening while I try to share the pitfalls of CPS and how to get your kids back.